All right. Well, we have a whole lot of questions, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. So we'll be started right here with, well, this is a very interesting question. We'll start with an interesting one for you. Lindsay Munier says, was there ever a time where you doubted whether you would be able to be successful in this field?
Yes, I think there are always doubts. I mean, I think sometimes you have to have confidence in yourself. I mean, everybody has to start somewhere. I have students who sometimes say to me, well, I don't think I'm going to be good. But, I mean, it takes time. I mean, it takes practice as well. But don't ever doubt yourself. I mean, every cake you make is going to have flaws. I tell my students, there is no such thing as a perfect cake. I mean, that's where you become good as a sugar artist, is being able to cover your mistakes. That's where you stick a little flower or butterfly, But so don't ever doubt yourself. You're not good enough. I mean, but it does take a little time. Sometimes you have to practice things. But I think the most complicated thing about business is very multifaceted. But you also need to find a comfort zone of like mediums you enjoy working with. If you don't like sculpting cakes, then don't offer sculpted cakes. I mean, don't put yourself in a stressful position of doing something you don't enjoy, because then you're going to get burnt out, and then in 2 or 3 years you're going to say, I've had enough of this. So just really do what you enjoy doing, and then the rest will just come naturally.
Absolutely. I agree completely with that. All right. We have Pam Galty says, I already purchased your flower class, among others, and now I feel my skill level is good enough to make for bakeries, but want to do it from home. So far, the bakeries I've contacted aren't receptive. Do you see a market for this, or should I find a different way to market?
There is a huge, actually I have several students here in Atlanta. There is a huge market for making handmade sugar flowers, because yes, you can buy pre-made sugar flowers, but as we all know, they're very thick and they're not very sometimes not very attractive. I mean, some of them are okay, but a lot of my students work with pastry chefs at high-end hotels like Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, W Hotels, where especially when a pastry chef is doing $6,000 to $9,000 wedding cake, that maybe the client has brought a photograph of this cake with lots of flowers on it. They don't have the skill, or mostly it's not the skill, but it's the time to do that in-house. But definitely, I mean, bakeries I think is a way, but the bakery has a limited market, because typically a lot of times when somebody goes to a bakery for a cake, it's going to not be such a high-end cake. But I mean, if you can get in with even like a cake designer and go and see them and take some examples of your work, and because again, a lot of cake designers don't have time to make sometimes handmade sugar flowers, but if they know that you can offer that service to them. But the advantage of making flowers is that, I have several students. One of my students she's a busy mom with 2 young children, but she can easily make sugar flowers, when she puts the babies down for her nap or children down for a nap. It's something that she can just sort of multitask, whereas actually making a cake is a little bit more difficult if you have young ones running around, and she can fit that in with her schedule. And the nice thing also with sugar flowers is you can make them months in advance. So during the winter time, when maybe you're not as busy with cakes or people aren't using, you can stockpile a lot of your basic flowers, like your ivy leaves, your stephanotis and things. And then when the chef wants particular types of flowers, you can then make those as needed. But it can be a very successful business, and it's also very lucrative as well.
That's a really good concept. I've heard of a lot of people, they will either make, cake toppers and sell cake toppers, or, or of course gum paste flowers, things like that, but not do a whole cake, because that's what their passion is in the the sculpting work or the flower work, or that type of a thing. And I know I've had people come to me and ask me if I would make flowers for them, and these are small home-based cake businesses that are asking, and so I would suggest not just bakeries, but like you said, Nicholas, hotels, or home-based cake decorators, maybe open up an Etsy shop online, the Etsy online, and maybe sell. You'd have to really get down your shipping if you wanted to do that. But yeah, make sure they're packaged very, very carefully.
Yes.
But those are some great ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's
All
sort
right.
of, this thing is just to sort of finish up about that. I mean, at the end of the day, if you, let's say you charge a pastry chef $200 for the sugar flowers for the topper for a wedding cake, then the hotel charges the client $400. That's no problem. I mean, as long as you get out of it what you want. Generally, I tell my students, don't sort of undersell yourself. I mean, because because basically the hotel or whoever you're working with is just going to put that extra charge onto the client. So always make sure you charge what you want to get out of it. And but it can have a very successful, very lucrative business just making sugar flowers if you don't enjoy making cakes. This is it's like a bit like a craft, but it's a craft that's going to make you a lot of money, or potentially could make you a lot of money. So good luck, everybody, with that.
Yes, definitely. All right. This is another advice question. It says, from all of your cake experiences, what is the most important advice you would give to novice cake decorators?
I think to a novice cake decorator, you just have to, don't run before you can walk. I mean, you need to start off with, the really important thing is to start off with a good cake. It doesn't matter how fabulous your cake looks. If it doesn't taste good, people aren't going to come back to you and get repeat orders. So the really important thing is to start off with the classic important things. A good cake, how to fill a cake, also the construction of the cake. A lot of people don't know how to dough cakes properly, how to set up a cake properly. Those are all very, very important. But then also, as you learn new techniques, add them to your repertoire. Don't feel you have to do all of these cakes that you see in magazines and on the internet, because everybody has to start somewhere, and you start off offering your clients what you have a comfort zone with. Because again, just like getting burnt out doing things you don't want to do, you don't want to put yourself in that stress position of saying to a client, oh yes, I can do that, and then you realize you basically can't do that. And some things take practicing, like stenciling techniques takes practice. So you practice it first on some dummy cakes and then on the real cake. That's what you do to friends and family who are not generally paying you for the cake, that have no right to tell you what the cake should look like. That's where you try out things. And then once you feel confident, then you can start offering that to a client. But it's just a question of, fundamental things like learning how to pipe properly, how to do a lot of the basic things, that's really important fundamental knowledge.
I absolutely agree with that. I think a lot of people, like you said, run before they walk.
Yes.
I think the real basics, the piping is really important, and of course knowing how to bake a cake properly. That's the whole reason why people order cake is for it to taste good, right?
That's right.
All right, we have a question from Kimberly Martin now. She says, I noticed that you mentioned using Tylose powder with the fondant. Does Tylose and fondant medium work better than just regular gum paste or as a medium on its own?
Well, generally, the main reason why I would use it is because when I'm trying to match the color, like for example, when I, let's say, do a contemporary wedding cake with black on, I might use black fondant for one of the tiers of the cake, and then I might want to make some, say, black polka dots or black ribbon around one of the tiers. So that's where I would modify it. By adding the Tylose to the fondant, it means it changes the structure of it, but it means you don't change the color. So that means within one wedding cake, you could have, say, black fondant, you could have black modified fondant, which would be like you use for ribbons or polka dots and things. And then if you wanted to make even black flowers, you can actually just add twice the amount of Tylose. So the recipe I spoke about earlier, you just would use twice the amount of Tylose to that, and that would actually make it more comparable to gum paste. So that's generally what I use, because the advantage of if you can buy fondant in black or you can buy fondant in different colors, it's sometimes easier than starting off with white paste and then trying to color it. Also, the other thing you have to remember is the different manufacturers, when you buy, say, colored pink rolled fondant, most manufacturers are not going to sell you the color they used. So the problem is if you're trying to sort of make the piping the same, it becomes very complicated to try and get the color to match. So that's where I use a lot of fondant techniques. But a lot of things I've shown you and spoken about, you could of course totally do with gum paste. But just remember, gum paste dries a lot harder. So generally when you're using it on especially like cookies or stuff like that, it's going to get a little bit hard. So that's why I prefer to use fondant or modified fondant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Let's see. Linda Quinteville asks, how do you know what trend will be in with a little advance time? Like, do you go by fashion books, clothes, things in that area?
Yes, totally. I mean, I'm very lucky because I travel a lot. I travel an immense amount. So, like when I go to Paris a lot and, Tokyo and things. So I'm always looking at what the trends are. But even like this year, like if you go into a sort of a store like Crate and Barrel, or you go into Target, or just those type of stores in a mall or where you live, you're going to sort of see trends in fashion and interior design. And then as far as like in weddings, I mean, looking at a bride's magazine, like later this fall, they'll start having what's going to be the sort of trend in colors and flowers, what the trend flower is going to be next year. And that will be sort of usually in more bridal magazines. But like there is also, there's a Pantone color of the year. So this year, for example, the Pantone color of the year is emerald. But that's not a color that a lot of brides are going to use. It's more of a sort of, it is a popular color. But, generally, as I said, there's going to be trend colors, and then there's going to be sort of like Pantone colors. But just generally speaking, just watching what's happening in a department store or, in magazines and things like that, you're going to start to see what the trends are for the next year. Perfect.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll ask just a couple more questions. We have so many questions. All right. Someone was asking about the bow effect on the brownies. You said you rolled them out with a pasta roller. Can you walk them through that effect one more time?
So what I do is we use just like a pasta machine. So you generally go through the pasta machine on number 4 thickness. And when you buy like the KitchenAid pasta machine, it's usually a triple set I recommend my students buy. There's a fettuccine attachment, which is going to give you like 1/4-inch wide noodles, so you make for like fettuccine. And so you then change out to that, and then you put the paste through that. You're going to get these 1/4-inch wide ribbons. And then you just brush the back of them with a little watered-down piping gel, where I take piping gel and water, equal quantities, just brush a little bit of that on the back of it, and then you lay that across the top of the package. But also you can, if you didn't have a pasta machine, you can use like gem cutters, like we sell on our website, gem number 3 strip cutter, and that is about a 1/4-inch wide gem strip cutter, which will cut actually like several strips at one time, so you can just cut that out. So there are several options you could use for that, but I use that a lot for those little small bows and ribbons.
Wonderful. Okay, and then someone's asking about your ganache-based buttercream that you mentioned. Could you talk them through that? So you use a Swiss meringue, is that what you said?
Yeah, I usually use the Swiss meringue buttercream, but you could use this on any type of butter. But you can either take like a ganache base, like you use to make like when you make ganache with heavy cream and chocolate, and you can just let that cool a little bit, and then you can just add some of that to like vanilla buttercream. You can also take, for example, you could just take some cocoa powder into white buttercream, and then also some melted chocolate. But by adding either a ganache base or a melted chocolate to the buttercream, what it means is then when you put the brownie in the refrigerator, what it's going to do is going to firm up. Because the Swiss meringue buttercream is a lot softer, and so having melted chocolate in it in the form of either melted chocolate added with cocoa powder or a ganache base, which is chocolate and heavy cream added to the buttercream, what it means is once you refrigerate the cake, before you cut out the squares, and once you've got the lollipop stick in there, it means it's going to make a firmer foundation. So that's what typically I prefer to use when I'm doing my brownie pops.
Perfect. So either adding chocolate, melted chocolate, or ganache to a buttercream base.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I'm just putting just chocolate in, I normally add some cocoa powder, like Dutch processed cocoa powder, to it as well, to taste. But that is how I usually make chocolate buttercream when I'm doing, especially things like cupcakes, or as I said, like the cake pops and things like that.
Perfect. All right. There's a lot of people asking about classes. Do you have a list of your upcoming classes? I know I usually put up a list on our trainings, and I failed to do that, and I apologize. So is there a place where they can go to see a list of all of the upcoming classes?
So if you go to my website, which is www.nicholaslodge, so just my name, nicholaslodge.com, you can click on class schedule. We have, our online shopping, but also if you go onto my Facebook page, I have over 10,000 people on my Facebook page. There's a Chef Nicholas Lodge. If you just do a search for Chef Nicholas Lodge, I do post things on Facebook as well. So like I spoke about the AUI demonstrations, like in Orlando, New York, and different cities. I will post all that information to Facebook. And you can also, if you go to on the website, you can actually click for an electronic newsletter. And so you can sign up for an electronic newsletter, and we do blast emails like usually about every week or so of upcoming classes. So like, for example, next week we have a 5-day Ultimate Gum Paste Sugar Flour class, and then we have a 3-day Rolled Fondant class the following week. So we do blast emails about the classes, but you can see the classes for the rest of the year here in Atlanta on the class schedule. But as I said, if you sign up for our electronic newsletter or go into Facebook, that is a way of getting more sort of current, up-to-date information, especially on my out-of-town classes like Cake Camp or, the Albert Ooster events and things like that.
Perfect. All right. So make sure you head over to his website. Also, I will blog about this on CakeFu. So if you guys go later on today, I'll put up a picture of the kit that's available that Nicholas talked about, links to his websites, links to I guess NASA or whatever we decide to add into that. So make sure you go check that out.
Thank you.